Hello and welcome to State View, a program that helps you to stay well informed and helps you to keep track of what is happening on Beacon Hill and how that affects you living as a resident in Massachusetts. Joining me today from the 2nd Norfolk District is Representative Tacky Chan. He's joining me remotely, and of course one of the topics we'll talk about almost immediately will be COVID-19 and the pandemic. But Representative Chan, thank you very much for joining me remotely.
Oh, thank you for having me along, and welcome to my dining room.
Yes, and a nice dining room it is. I do want to, just for folks, before we actually get into the program and get into some bills, just an introduction as to who is Representative Chan.
Well, for those that are not in Quincy, my name is Tacky Chan. I'm the representative of the 2nd Norfolk District, which is entirely in the city of Quincy. I'm the chair of the Joint Committee on Consumer Protection and Professional Licensure. I was elected in 2010 and sworn in 2011, so I'm now into my 11th year in office. So time flies when you're having fun. And I'm one of the first people elected in State House that's Asian American descent, and one of the first ones also elected in the city of Quincy. And that sums it up.
It's great. It's great to have you again. I wish you were in studio. I think we'll get there at some point. You mentioned Asian American, and I do want to talk about the Asian hate crime bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the federal government, they passed a new hate crimes bill that requires greater data reporting from local law enforcement agencies, because one of the challenges of hate crimes is not great reporting mechanisms. At the local level, the state is looking at hate crime bills update, I think is the best way to put it. One of the challenges we have is best identification of hate crimes under law, and for law enforcement to follow statute, for lack of a better point, to identify all the different elements of the crime so it can be properly charged. In the Asian American community in particular, we believe that our demographics has a lower reporting of hate crimes than others because of incorrect perceptions regarding our persons of color and where we fit in the world, which is actually a significantly longer conversation. And I'm sure many professors you can find can talk more about it more succinctly than I can. But the hope is that we also include some form of hate incident reporting or issues that do not rise to the level of hate crime. And what do I mean by that? So hate crime is actually involved what it sounds like a crime. It's a crime targeted against a protected class, specifically because of that protected class. But if you're doing something that does not rise to the level of crime, for example, denial of service does not rise to the level of crime, discriminatory service does not rise to a crime, but you feel it is, you have a thing that can report hate incidences. And Stop AAIP Hate website shows how many hate incidences and most likely hate crimes have occurred in the United States since the start of the pandemic. And the state of New York has been doing a little bit better on data tracking. They report well past 350%, I think it's like 361% increase on hate crimes against Asian Americans in New York. And actually just recently, a Chinese woman was pushed onto the train tracks in New York and killed by an individual unprovoked. This seems to be a reoccurring pattern in our communities where we are there and then we get attacked and there's actually no rationale behind the attack, which is actually extremely frightening, very frightening.
Absolutely. Now, you have been the victim of hate crimes?
No, thankfully not.
Okay.
I've been around hate incidences. That is without fail. But in terms of like an actual assault, robbery, attempted murder, run me over your car, that type of situation, thankfully I've not had that type of encounter. But racial slurs, even as remember a young child, treated poorly. I watched my dad getting treated poorly regarding service in certain places, commercial and restaurants and whatnot, and those things kind of stick with you.
Now, folks might think that this is relatively new because of the origin of the pandemic, but again, from what you said, not so. Maybe just given an extra push during the COVID-19 pandemic and, again, the origin being from China?
It's a greater awareness that we've had now than we've ever had regarding Asian American racism. And when I say Asian American, I mean all ethnicities of Asians. We're talking about Indians, Pakistani, Vietnamese, Indonesians, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, and so forth and so forth.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of us out there. We're not monolithic. Everyone's a unique culture, unique language, unique histories. But it's not new. I mean, back in the early 20th century, the bubonic plague was found in San Francisco. The solution by the administration, which is not surprising, white-run city government in San Francisco in the early 20th century, was to burn down Chinatown. That literally was the solution. So we've not obviously had a situation like the bubonic plague in wide scale, and we had the Spanish flu or the 1918 flu more accurately. The COVID-19 situation definitely has elevated the issue. But I'll also remind people, during 9/11, a lot of Asians with brown skin were attacked, assaulted, and accused of being terrorists. This is not new. During the early 1980s, you had the Vincent Chin incident, where a Chinese man was mistaken for a Japanese person during the Japanese car industry competition in the U.S. and was murdered by two white automobile employees. It was premeditated. I mean, they followed him to kill him. It wasn't like a random situation. They just ran into the guy. They literally followed and killed him. They got away with a fine and probation. And the U.S. Justice Department couldn't get together their act on a hate crime charge. So if you guys look up Vincent Chin on the internet, I'm going to tell you, you're going to find very little information on, quite frankly, one of the most egregious murders in this country, where the perpetrators figured out, you had the ability to do it. I mean, the judge at one point said, these are not the people that would commit a crime, even though all the evidence pointed that way, and you get a fine and probation. You try to do that today, it's much more difficult to do that. But I mean, there was like 3 years of constant protesting by Asian American communities, all Asian American communities, as well as other people of color. Japanese internment camps, people talk about that, but those doesn't know what that really means. That's the only group of U.S. citizens ever detained by the U.S. government for over 6 years with no reason and no recompense. And it was actually done legally by the U.S. Supreme Court. Chinese Exclusion Act. People talk about that too. But it's not just the Chinese. Chinese was the first big group where you restrict or limit certain demographics from coming into the country. And you also denied citizenship. Specific ethnic groups in Asia were denied, particularly Chinese, citizenship. They were just flat out not allowed to be U.S. citizens. You couldn't get naturalization. And of course, something a little more closer to home and more recent, during the Obama administration, actually they signed into law during that stimulus bill language to give Filipino war veterans for World War II veterans benefits. Vietnamese folks that fought for us in World War II were specifically excluded from receiving veterans benefits. But you don't see anyone out there advocating for this demographic. But think about how long that took. It took to the Obama administration.
It's a long time. It shouldn't have taken that long, clearly. We could talk about just this in the entire episode, but this is a half-hour program, so we will move on. You're, again, welcome back to chat at a different time, too. Always the invitation stands. Let's talk about COVID-19 and various bills that have been enacted or proposed as a result of the pandemic.
Sure. We've did a huge stimulus bill using the ARPA money to address a lot of COVID-19 concerns, ranging from workforce to providing support to our school systems and addressing COVID-19. More recently, though, we passed a bill for $55 million, following the governor's lead regarding expanded testing and providing masks in the school systems. And we actually are requiring the governor to pursue FEMA money for reimbursement for this $55 million. Outdoor dining is something everyone enjoys. I mean, there's no question about that, very successful. And my committee actually oversees the alcohol industry and also the Board of Building Regulators. So right now we're working to try to find a more uniform way to address outdoor dining and alcohol-related issues in the industry. Right now it's been more of an executive order emergency situation, and talking to businesses as well as municipal officials around the state it was, for lack of a better term, we just got to do something now because we don't know what to do and we got to do something. Well, now that we've been, unfortunately, living like this for almost 2 years at this stage, the committee position is that we can't just do whatever emergency. We have enough experience that we should have some kind of guidance and plan to look at outdoor dining as a permanent feature of our society, and obviously helps the restaurant industry. So we're working hard on that issue as well.
And talk about a petition that you fronted regarding receiving about unpaid leave of absence. If you could talk about that a bit. For 2 years,
Sure.
I believe.
Yeah, in response to the governor's order to require that all state employees be vaccinated, I filed legislation to give employees the option of 2 years unpaid leave in lieu of complying with the governor's executive order. I think we all agree on this call, and I'd be surprised if anyone says otherwise, that if you're not working, you should get paid for not working. That is not the intention of this bill. What it does, it creates some seniority of preservation should they return to service in the state. It also ensures that there's enough time there to address people's concerns and needs to try to get in compliance if they want to get in compliance. And the date was picked somewhat randomly because we're not sure how long we're going to live like this. But pick 2 years as maybe a reasonable time where we can get to some level of normality in some form with the combination of vaccinations and better mitigation associated with COVID-19 and the current Omicron variant and potentially more variants down the road. This bill is very unpredictable. So, I picked a pretty long time frame for unpaid leave intentionally because of the unpredictability of the situation.
And I know remote meetings have certainly come into play as a result of the pandemic. There was just a meeting held the other day. You could talk a little bit about that and basically affecting towns, correct?
Yes, we included in the $55 million supplemental budget a continuation of remote town meetings, continuation of remote notaries until July 15th, 2022. We also included language to allow for remote town meetings, of which the town kind of has to figure out what they're going to do on their own on complying with it. We're putting a lot of the responsibility on town moderators and town government to figure it out. But, we do allow that as well. We all know that if you're in a town, your budgets are coming up, town elections are coming up, and so forth. So, we are very cognizant of that. And on a personal level, my committee, we have been doing public hearings in a public forum through my Facebook page, that Representative Taki Chan page. You don't have to be a Facebook member to view it, as well as providing all my public hearings and executive sessions on the state legislative website.
If we could talk about consumer protection, a big item in your committee, and maybe some things that have happened in the past that have obviously been beneficial, and what's been going on recently.
Well, I tell everybody my committee catches everything no one else wants. So it's a very broad range of issues. So one of the issues of we've been looking at is whether or not we should increase the Chapter 93A Consumer Protection Law for increased penalties during times of state of emergency. This has been probably the longest state of emergency we've seen since World War II and the Korean War. I mean, I don't think anybody can remember a time we've had state of emergency this long, but it also creates mischief and sometimes unsavory behavior by folks on consumers, and whether or not we should increase the penalty from 3 times to 5 times. Whether or not we should do that. Another thing we're actually working on, and we hope to have ready by Joint Route 10 on February 2nd, is the addressing health clubs. People may remember the Boston Sports Club was holding people's money, as well as still charging you for not being open to use the health club. So we're proposing some consumer-oriented regulations to hold greater accountability, and also to ensure that people are able to cancel their gym membership when we can't use it. And this is something I think people may have forgotten, but I'm sure if you're a gym member, you haven't forgotten. So it's a COVID-related issue that has created a larger consumer issue overall.
And go back, I don't know how many years back, but talk about the incident that happened with the credit reporting agencies.
Sure. Equifax I think we're back in 2017 at the beginning of the year. Equifax had a security breach, which resulted in a lot of people's personal data being stolen. Equifax is one of the three credit reporting agencies out there. So when you do a credit report, there's only three companies that do it that hold all this information. Due to their intentional malfeasance, because they did not do the security update as it was discovered, is what allowed hackers to access a personal terminal like your laptop you're using right now, for example, that has that someone's password. They got a virus and they managed to get in to Equifax and get the data. We did a law in 2000, worked on 2017 in 2018 to provide consumers greater access to consumer reports, greater access to credit freezes, what do you call security watch or credit watch in case there's a sudden change in credit monitoring, and also greater accountability regarding reporting this information to Office of Consumer Affairs and the Attorney General's office. Attorney General's office already has the power to pursue any kind of breach under the current consumer protection law per incident of individual. So, you got 1 million people impacted in Massachusetts. That's 1 million instances so that the AG could levy consumer protection fines against. So a lot of what we did was less about the criminal component or civil penalty component, more about ensuring that consumers have more tools and access provided at no cost to them in instances of a breach. And the people who had the breach should pay for those services that provides greater protection for consumers.
Talk about the internet and slander.
Yeah, I got an odd little bill here that is, I'm not going to lie and tell you it's a complete bill, but it's more of an idea thrown into the air regarding people's behavior on the internet and how it impacts your day-to-day lives, and whether or not it impacts you financially and personally in a manner that rises the level of slander. You have slander as continuous lies that result in a negative effect on your day-to-day life to live normally. And you see this in tabloid news. I mean, everyone knows what a tabloid news is, but they have a lot of First Amendment rights. What's a little bit different on the internet is while you do have your First Amendment rights, you're not the media, right? It's not the same thing. This is the media outlet we're talking here. You have different First Amendment protection rights, under the Constitution. So, given the this was actually filed before the current life we're living regarding everyone on the internet expressing an opinion, and the social media agencies trying to police the situation. I filed this before that. So it's just an idea put out there to see if anyone can figure out the committee, or if I can figure this out down the road. What levels of internet harassment or internet fiction, internet falsities put against an individual, will have such a high negative effect on their life that it could be a criminal offense or civil offense as well. You could probably sue for recovery.
Okay. I'd like to talk about something that a lot of folks in the Commonwealth know very well because of the previous election, and that's the right to repair law.
Yeah, the right to repair law was approved by the voters 2 years back to allow third-party car repair shops to access the telemetric data on your car for repair purposes. Voters approved the law 6 years ago now, or 7 years ago now, that allowed car repair shops, third-party repair shops, equal access to all the data and the tools and educational training as the same as any dealership. And this is a little bit different because they're now looking at your telemetric data. So this issue is actually currently before the First Circuit federal court. A stay was put by the Attorney General on enforcement, and the federal court is looking at whether or not it violates any number of federal issues from Commerce Clause to federal laws regarding car safety and whatnot. And it's gotten very technical and very complicated. So some of you folks, well, what's wrong with that? Well, it's because you're going to have to change your car specifically to be sold in Massachusetts. And if you buy a car from outside of Massachusetts, it has to now change to be compliant in Massachusetts. So it's a little bit more involved than people thinking. So if you're moving from, let's say, Chicago to Boston with your car has to change. If you're going to sell your car, you buy a car in Rhode Island on the border and try to bring it to Massachusetts, your car has to change. And it's all electronic data. And one of the things people don't realize is that your car actually transmits data to manufacturers, which is why your warranty information comes up so fast. That if there's errors popping up, the manufacturer can very quickly respond. And the repair shops wants the same information transmitted to their shops as well.
The Model
And
Ts never did that.
no, the Model T's never did that. You gotta get, there's no crank and push. So, but I mean, think about all the data in your car, right? It's not just the radio stations and your mileage. It includes your phone contacts now, your GPS data. Some cars have weight sensors, believe it or not. It's how you know you have a seatbelt on or not, whether there's a passenger next to you. It analyzes your driving habits. It analyzes what parts of your car, especially electronic components, may be failing and need to alert you of the failures before something goes catastrophic. Cars are much safer because of the modern technology. And yes, there's some intrusion, but for a car manufacturer to release any kind of data from they receive from your car requires actually a federal order. They won't do it unless the FBI essentially shows up and looks for that information. But if you give it to a third-party repair shop, there is nothing that stops them from giving away that information. And if they accidentally stumbled onto your contact list and download it, one, you never know they did it. And second, maybe they'll sell it and you have no idea what happened. And groups like Jane Doe has expressed concerns about this issue in the past because, GPS data is there, phone contacts data, you can find out, who you called last and so forth because that data is sitting inside your telemetrics. So I think the first instinct everyone has is, we should have a choice of where to repair our cars. But that already exists in the current law. I mean, there's nothing stopping any third party from repairing a car.
And this was as a result of 6 years ago?
Yeah, 6 years ago. Everything works fine in terms of that. If a repair shop chooses not to get the updated education, chooses not to get the tools or the parts, well, that's on them, not on the consumer. But the consumer should be aware that what they voted for was greater access by people you don't know to get at all the information in your car. And that's one of the real concerns that we have on the committee level. But because of the current court situation, we don't try to pass laws while knowing what the court's going to say first. Otherwise, if they see something different than what we passed, then we have to go back and change it again, which is, makes us look stupid. I mean, let's be honest about it.
Let's talk about, in the few minutes that we have left, the state lottery. Also comes under your committee, correct?
Oh, yeah. I got a lot of stuff, yes.
Yeah. And on the online aspect of the lottery.
Yeah, I've not been fond of online lotteries. So what the lottery wants to propose is allow you to buy lottery scratch tickets, Keno, and other games through a mobile device or your computer. And the argument they've always made is that we have to address the changing environment regarding our players because we want to attract newer, younger players to participate in the lottery. And we're going to face sales issues if we don't. And let's talk about the public policy associated with expanded gaming is what it is. I mean, it's encouraging new people to gamble. I mean, let's not pretend the lottery is not about gambling. And secondly, it's about the brick and mortar folks. So your bars and restaurants, your convenience stores, are lottery vendors. They're basically our contractors, and they receive 5% of every dollar you play towards the revenue. And in the case of convenience stores, it's an additional service. In the case of bars, it's part of their entertainment at the bar. With pandemic, the bars, restaurants were closed, and we lost that revenue for lottery for a short period of time. And it's actually now a big part of restaurant recovery is maintaining those Keno machines for them. And we take that away in terms of online lottery, that's going to have a negative effect on that restaurant. No restaurant wants to see you playing Keno on your phone while there's a Keno machine in the restaurant. That doesn't help the restaurant. So, the other argument from the lottery is that we need money. Well, the lottery is approaching yet another record-breaking year, despite pandemic, on revenues, which will convert back to cities and towns for local aid. The state sees pretty much almost nothing other than administrative cost of operations of the lottery. It all goes back to cities and towns. We do set some caps on it, and this year, it looks like FY22 is going to have a record number. We're going to have a surplus. So far, the projections show a surplus. So, we got to make some decisions on that money sometime soon. But at the same time, though, I mean, that argument's problematic. If you're saying you're making record amounts of money, and at the same time saying we're losing money, you can't do both, obviously. So, that's kind of what we're looking at. So I'm not really warm to the idea given the fact that we're a top 5 lottery state, and we're also the highest spend per population. We spend twice as much per capita as Rhode Island. I'm trying to remember the exact figure. I think it was close to $2,000 of a lottery play per capita in Massachusetts, a state of just 7 million people.
Really?
Yeah, next big one's Rhode Island, which is less than half of that.
Okay.
I think I have to look up the number. I want to say it's 2,000, but it could be 1,200. Yeah, it's high, and twice as much as Rhode Island.
Okay. Well, bring that into the next program. In the last couple of minutes, and again, you're welcome back, either in studio or remotely, to chat with me again. But anything you'd like to bring to light in the last, 3 minutes that we have?
What, the open-ended question in 3 minutes, lightning round?
Well, yeah, you have free reign for 3 minutes.
That's always dangerous. Well, I mean, some of you may or may not know Joint Route 10 is rolling around on February 2nd. I mentioned it very briefly earlier. A lot of bills are going to be coming out at that point, whether further action is going to move on both the House and the Senate. And, I appreciate everyone's advocacy on a large number of issues presented to us. I mean, I get hundreds of emails, sometimes, every day I get hundreds of emails, and people expressing their interest on a lot of matters. So you're going to see a lot more legislative action coming up after February 2nd as the agenda moves forward. And also, mail-in voting is being a big topic.
Absolutely.
We're looking to address mail-in voting hopefully before the end of January. I mean, don't quote me on that, but there's a strong interest in the House now to try to, get this issue done relatively soon. So, stay tuned for that as well.
Well, Representative Chan, I want to thank you for joining me here today in the Quincy Access Television studios. But once again, this program will be going throughout the Commonwealth for folks to watch and watch again.
Yeah, have fun with this. If you get bad reviews on me, I definitely won't be back. So,
well, if they're bad reviews, I will hold them from you, just to ensure that you will be back. But thank you once again, and until next time.
Thank you. It's be safe and be well.
Yes, you as well. And thank you for watching this program, State View. Please continue to support your local access television station.